and Happy New Year. I'm Bo and this is Bo's Books. Welcome back. I know that I've taken an impromptu hiatus over the month of December. I read 10 and a half books in November during the Dungeons and Book Dragons readathon, and I learned something about burnout. I feel like I need to learn how to balance the things that I love a little bit better in 2026. So that's going to be a new goal of mine, is to not burn myself out with the things that I love. I read so many books in 1 month that I just have not wanted to pick up another book since, and that's awful, especially for somebody who has a book channel and a love for reading. Now, it's already January 7th by the time I'm starting to film this video, and maybe you're wondering, Bo, where is your final FMC video for your January TBR? Well, since I've been in such a reading slump, I think I'm gonna take a break for the month of January and jump back into it for February. I know, don't hate me. I'm so sorry. I know a lot of people find my channel and subscribe to my channel because of my TBR game. So if that's you and you're a little disappointed, I'm sorry. But I do have to, balance, like I was saying. So I'm just gonna try not to force myself to do things if I'm just not feeling it. So for the month of January, I'm actually just focusing on refreshing myself, jumping back into it, easing into things, and hopefully get back into full-on reading in February, or maybe at the end of January. We'll see how it goes. I feel like right now, mostly what I've been wanting to do almost every single day is play video games. And when I say video games, specifically, I've been playing The Sims non-stop. I've been a simmer since the year 2000, so that's another big hobby of mine, in case you wanted to know what I do besides reading. I also really got back into playing D&D, mainly inspired by the Dungeons and Book Dragons readathon, which was themed after Dungeons and Dragons. And so because of that, I just fell back in love with Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm currently in 2 campaigns. I might even start DMing a 3rd campaign, so talk about trying to balance my hobbies. I struggle with overcommitment. Hopefully I can figure this out. I just want to do it all. But to get back into things, I wanted to do a tier ranking video of all 66 books that I read in 2025. I thought that would be a fun way to look back at the year that I had in reading, especially my first year back into reading. I want to look back and see how my reading taste changed throughout the year, kind of see some trends that might have shown up. I'm not going to do like a full-on stats video, and I'm not going to go into every book description of like what the book's about, because I feel like that would take so long, but I kind of want to just see how I feel about all these books now, despite whatever my reviews were and whatever I rated them at the time of reading. I want to see how I feel about these books now. Another thing that I thought was really cool is I read 66 books in 2025, and I also watched 66 movies in 2025. Isn't that just so fun? My goal for 2025 was to only read 25 books, and I far surpassed that. In 2026, besides balancing my hobbies and my life, I have a reading goal of only 12 books. If I can read the equivalent of 1 book a month in the year 2026, I will be happy and satisfied with my reading. BookTube is not my job. I don't get an income from this. I have a full-time job outside of this. So sometimes balancing hobbies, like I was saying, is a struggle, and I don't want to put pressure and make this feel like work. I'm here for fun and community, and I want it to stay that way. Okay, here we are on the Tier Maker website, and I created my own tier ranking categories. So hopefully you can see it large enough on your screen. If you can't, I'm going to read it to you anyways. So we have profound and thought-provoking. Then we have I love this so much I would actually reread it. Now I put that because I'm not a rereader. I don't reread books. Even my favorite books, I don't ever want to pick them up and reread them, because in my mind, I want to read so many books, and there's so many books in so little time that I'm never going to get to read everything I want to read. So why am I going to waste my time rereading a book that I've already read when I can use that time to read something new? So that's always been my mentality in the past, but I think in 2026, one of my goals is going to be to actually reread one or two of my favorite books because I'm curious to see if I will still love those books as much as I recall loving them. One book in particular being my favorite book of all time that I constantly tell people about is Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. This is a historical fiction sapphic romance set in the Victorian era. This young girl becomes heavily infatuated with a male impersonator that comes to her town, and the story just unfolds from there. So my next category in yellow is I enjoyed this. The next one is good, but it didn't blow me away. The next one is not for me. And the next one is DNF Graveyard. The purple one is On Pause. So that's like a soft DNF, a book that I started reading and I probably liked it and I want to continue it, but I was just not in the mood to finish it at that time. And I do plan on finishing it in the future. The next one after that is Favorite Covers. And the last one is, I don't know where to put this. I think I DNF'd and soft DNF'd maybe around 5 or 6 books. So there's actually going to be around 71, 72 books in total. I actually arranged them in the order that I read them. So the very first book, This Is Where We Talk Things Out, that was the first book I read in January of 2025. I'm going to go in order and we can truly see how my reading progressed throughout the year. Okay, the first book we have is This Is Where We Talk Things Out. This was a little horror novella and I really enjoyed this book. I think it was a really good first read, especially during winter. I think I just really enjoyed it. I don't think it's like the best book I ever read, but I really had a good time reading it. It was so good to start the year off with something short and quick that I could get through, and I probably need to do that this year because like I said, it's the 7th of January and I have not picked up a book yet. After that, I read Goddess of Filth. I loved it, I really did, but I'll probably put it in I enjoyed this because I really liked it a lot. I would definitely recommend it. I definitely like this author and I want to read so much more from her. This is by V. Castro. She's a Mexican woman author and I just fell in love with reading about Mexican characters. It felt so relatable. I was like, oh, I feel like I know these girls, you know? This had such a twist for me on the possession story. It wasn't like The Exorcist. There was something so much deeper and more profound about it. Oh my gosh, it almost makes me want to put it in like profound and thought-provoking, but I don't know if it was all that. I don't know. Now I'm like, where should I put this? Like definitely one of these top 3 categories. This is so hard. I'm so indecisive. This is probably like the worst thing I could have done. I don't know why I thought this was gonna be fun. I guess it is, but oh my gosh. Okay, and the next one I started reading was A Court of Thorns and Roses. Okay, so now you're really gonna start seeing this was my first time in the book community. Okay, I just got back into reading. I didn't even know what my taste was. I hadn't read books since high school. I mean, I have read books since high, but not really. It was not since like I was a kid and in middle school and high school where I was like reading every week I'd have a new book. I haven't read consistently since then, so I was like, I don't even know what my reading taste is. I feel like horror would be obvious, but really I don't know. And so what I did was start following a bunch of people on Bookstagram and BookTube, and you know when you first start out in the book community, the algorithm just pushes everything that's popular to you and you see all the trends and everything. Yeah, so ACOTAR was the talk of the town, right? Like everybody and their mom has read ACOTAR, and so for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be in the book community. I want to read books again. I want to read what's popular. So I went out and bought almost the entire series of ACOTAR, and I've still not read one single book. So I started reading this, and it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I just have it on pause. So yes, I'm lingering over here. This book is on pause. I started annotating it. I was so excited, but I felt like the reason why I stopped is because fantasy, for me, I love fantasy. Don't get me wrong. I love a fantasy story. It's just that they're so long and they're usually part of a series, usually long series and sometimes unfinished series. I wanted things to keep moving. I was like, I just got back into reading. I want to go and try different things, different authors, different books. I don't have time to be committing to a long series. After that, I read The Rainbow Fish. This was the one book I reread in 2025. I don't even know how to rank a children's picture book. This is so random. I'm just gonna I don't know where to put this. Okay, this next one is called Lube Me Up with Fry Grease by Freak. I love clowns, and I have a Ronald McDonald tattoo on my arm. So I just thought that was so hilarious that there was going to be a fast food themed erotica book. And I was like, this is so funny. And I guess it's like extreme horror erotica, which is a wild conglomeration of genres here, but it actually turned out to be not for me, and I would have DNF'd it if it wasn't so short. I was like, I can get through. I think it's only like 100 pages or something. It's super, super short, and I just powered through it, even though I definitely feel like I shouldn't have. Something I also learned this year was the art of DNFing a book, and I'm trying to get better about that because growing up in my reading journey, I never wanted to DNF a book. I thought if you started reading something, you had to finish it, and that's how I have lived most of my life. But being in the book community, I feel like I have been blessed with the knowledge that there's so little time. Don't waste your time on things that you're not enjoying. But I was not in that mindset in the very beginning of the year, so I finished it. It's for some people out there. It's just a very niche group of people, I will say. It's one of those books that's like gross for the sake of being gross because that's the joke, that's the humor in it, and I just don't have that kind of humor. The next one I picked up was another children's book. So this is when I just found out about NetGalley, and I decided to request a children's audiobook, and this is called The Fairy Door Diaries. I'll put it in good, but it didn't blow me away. It's not something that I'm still thinking about today. It was good and I enjoyed it for what it was at the time, but I'm not like clamoring to read the next one or anything like that. It's definitely for young kids that are interested in fairies. It kind of reminds me of like Wonderland and Narnia and Peter Pan, except not that good, but like that same kind of category of fun. Okay, the next book we're going to talk about, I feel like needs a little bit of an explanation because I'm not gonna say I'm ashamed or embarrassed, but like this is definitely not my taste. So I feel like I need to explain myself. I don't know how YouTube is gonna feel about the titles of the books written by Amy Award, but yeah, she was actually my most read author in 2025, which is so weird when you see the rest of my reading taste. Okay, I picked her books up as a joke. I thought it was gonna be funny, okay? I was like, that's hilarious. I've never read a spicy romance. I'm not a big fan of contemporary romance, especially not like spicy ones. And I just thought the title of this book was hilarious, okay? And I also thought the cover was really, really cute, okay? You have like a plus size female main character, super cute. She's like a little librarian, and then there's this like really cute football player behind her. And I was like, I want to read this. This is super funny. I think this is gonna be hilarious, good time. I'm just gonna do it. And I actually really loved it. I had such a good time. The audiobook was great. I think it was just the first time I'd ever read anything like that exactly. The premise of this book is kind of like a Bridgerton style family where all the brothers are football players. Each book is a different sibling's story. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in I enjoyed this because I did. I think the first book was really good. I had a great time with it. No regrets, okay? I had so much fun. I should have just stopped there. I feel like it was the same book over and over again with the same not great writing. Should I say brain rot? There are things that you really don't need to pay attention to. I just had them in the background while I was working. When you see the 5 other books from Amy Award come up, that's my explanation. We don't have to get too into that, okay? Okay, so the next book I read was Bittersweet Chocolate, and this was a book that I read because on Bookstagram there was a little group of people that were like, let's do a buddy read for this horror book around Valentine's Day, and this book is actually set on and around Valentine's Day. I'm putting it in favorite covers because this is absolutely one of my favorite covers of the year. I think the cover was so, so, so cute. However, not one of my favorite reads. So this is a very short novella, horror, extreme horror esque book. So I guess it's just not for me. I think I rated it like 2 stars. That's why I don't know how big of a fan I am of novellas and short stories, because I feel like I don't get enough from the character development and the overall plot. I feel like everything just happens so quick. You could just literally read that last chapter and be like, oh, that's so crazy. I don't care about the characters the whole rest of the time before that. So yeah, it's just not for me, but it was an awesome, awesome cover. The next one I read was Hooked by Emily McIntyre, and this is the first book in the Never After series. I love Peter Pan, so I had to get it. I honestly didn't even really know what it was going to be about. When we looked up, we were like, oh, it's a dark romance. We thought it was just like a retelling of Peter Pan. This special edition is so beautiful. I'm going to have to pull it out because I'm going to put this in favorite covers. I don't know why I pulled out this version because I didn't even read this version. This is the original like paperback cover, but I'm going to put it in. It was good. It didn't blow me away. My best friend loved this book so much, but I don't think I liked it as much as she did, but it was good. I just love that it was themed around Peter Pan because I'm a big fan of Peter Pan. I love that book. That's a book that I love so much that I would actually reread because I have reread that book. Look at the sprayed edges on this book. It is so beautiful. And the back, look at it, so shiny. It has that quote. It is just one of the most beautiful books that I own. I feel like this might even be my favorite cover of the whole year. Okay, the next book that I picked up was another book that was super hyped in the book community by all the romance girlies. And this was before I really solidified that I was like, I'm not a romance girly, okay? I love romance from time to time, but again, it has to be a certain type of romance. It's usually going to be like some dark, weird romance, okay? If it's taboo or, strange, I'll love it. But if it's just like cutesy, I'm usually not into it, to be honest, which is weird because I love rom-com movies, but in book form, I don't know, I can't get behind it. But I read First Time Caller, and I thought it was the most boring book I had ever read in my life. I picked it up because it said it was equivalent to Sleepless in Seattle. It is one of my favorite romance movies that I've ever watched. I've watched that movie so many times with my mom, and I love it. But this had such a cute premise. Like, he's a radio talk show host, and she's a mechanic that comes in and she's looking for love. And the reason why I thought this was so boring is because there was no actual conflict. They both instantly had attraction to each other, but for some reason decided that they were not going to pursue each other and continue to try to find her love through other people. And I was like, why? You guys literally liked each other from the first second. Just date each other. There's literally nothing holding you back. So I thought the conflict in this was dumb. So that bothered me. But I will say this was one of the prettiest covers of all the books that I read. I literally pre-ordered this book because the cover was so cute and because Sleepless in Seattle. But I ended up not liking it, and I ended up trading it in a in-person book swap. But anyways, I'm going to put not for me. And again, this was before I was okay with DNFing. I struggled to finish that entire book when I should have DNF'd it from the start. Okay, after that, I picked up The Teacher, and this was part of a Bookstagram book club that I was in for a couple months, and then it kind of died out. But the first book that we read as a book club was The Teacher by Frida McFadden, and I had never read anything by Frida McFadden before. I had heard about her over and over and over again on Bookstagram by all the people that love her books. She has a huge following, and I just never picked up anything from her. I liked the premise. The very last twist made no freaking sense to me. I think the book was predictable the whole way through, so I wasn't like impressed by it. I feel like it's so hard to do like a good plot twist or even a good like murder mystery. The next book I read was Flanagan by James H. Longmore. Now, this is a book that I've never heard anybody talk about, okay? Even the ratings on like the platforms, like nobody is reading this book. So somebody reached out to me, the publisher, or I don't know if it was the author himself or the publisher, but they reached out to me on Bookstagram and asked me if I wanted to read this book. Now, it wasn't an arc or anything. Like, this book has been out for a while. So this book was published actually in 2018. So it's not a new book by any means, but it is a extreme horror novel, and I was like, yeah, sure. I'm new to the community, and I was just excited that anybody wanted me to read anything that they wrote. So I was like, heck yeah. And so I read it, and honestly, I loved this book. Like, it was like, I don't know, judge me all you want, but this book was so good to me. I know a lot of people would hate it, and I just loved it. It was something that I had never experienced before. Okay, I've never read a book that extreme before. I will say one qualm I had with the book was that the author talks about the one of the main characters, the female main character, her boobs the entire, but like every other sentence was a comment on about how big and beautiful her chesticles were. This is clearly written by a man. Like, I get it. This woman is impressive in the chest area. Like, we got it the first 15 times that you emphasize that. But that aside, this book was wild, crazy, and actually really genuinely scary to me because of the characters that they encounter in this journey. I feel like I would at some point reread that. I will say the beginning was boring and I almost gave up on it. But when you finally get to the gas station chapter and they meet these like redneck kind of characters and it's super grimy and creepy, it feels very like, I will say it was one of my favorites of the year for sure because it was something that I had never expected to read. And let me tell you, the twist at the end of this book, I had my jaw on the floor because I was like, what? You need to check trigger warnings though, because this book is intense. But anyways, let's go on to the next one. Notes on an Execution. Loved it. Okay, I absolutely love this book. You know what? This is profound and thought-provoking. It wasn't your typical book about a serial killer because it emphasized the women's stories, the women that were involved with this man that was the serial killer. Like, he was in prison, and yes, we get a little bit of his perspective, but the main focal point was all the women that were in his life, like his mother, his the women that he murdered, the detective that was part of it. It definitely shed some light on the fact that we have this big fascination with serial killers a lot of the times. Like, I'm guilty as charged of being fascinated by the mind of a person like that, but you never really think about the people that their lives affect and their actions affect. So I thought that was pretty thought-provoking for me to kind of look at that with a different lens. So that was a really, really good book. Definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. The next book I read was actually a non-fiction book, which I did not read many of those, but I chose to read The Diary of Anne Frank because I found it at a thrift store and I was like, you know what? I've never read this book. So I'm going to put this in profound and thought-provoking because it was so interesting. Going back and thinking about what these people experienced through World War II and just seeing how much of a real, genuine, like, teenage girl she was. Just her writing blew me away. The ideas and thoughts that she had just make you really like think about life in a different way, and I loved that about this book. Okay, the next one that I read was actually a beta read. So this is also something I've never done, but over on Bookstagram, I met a brand new author who was releasing her first book in 2025, and she had requested some beta readers for a dark romance novel that she was working on. The premise of it was set in the 1950s or early 1960s. The book has finally been released and she sent me a signed copy of it, and I was so happy to receive it. It was so awesome to be part of this experience. So this book is called Sinful Bargains by Zara Jade Astrid, and this book reminded me heavily of every Robert De Niro gangster mafia movie that I have watched. I just loved the tone of this. Now, it's a dark romance, and I feel like it's not entirely my taste, but because of the theme and the setting and the premise of like it was kind of coming of age, I liked it for that. I think I would have enjoyed it more if it was more categorized as coming of age and kind of leaned more into the coming of age part of it, but the focus was a little bit more on the dark romance of the adults rather than the young boy. And so that's my only kind of critique on it, I guess. But for what it was, I actually really liked it. So I think this was good. It didn't blow me away, but it was really, really good. And I would want to read it in its, full entire published version. I just didn't end up doing that because, like I said, I'm not a big rereader. So because I went through and read the whole beta read, I felt like I already read the book. So when I got the published version, it felt like I would have to reread the same story that I already just read. So that was just difficult for me. So I don't know when I'm going to get around to reading it. I do know she's working on her part 2 of the series, and I am curious to pick that one up. I definitely would continue the series because I liked where it was going, and I'm interested to continue with these characters. I really did enjoy my time with it, and I would definitely recommend it if you are into dark romance, if you're into the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s vibe, if you like movies like A Bronx Tale. That's the vibe you're getting from this, okay? I want to put it like in between these two. Okay, the next book on this list I have is The Dream Killer. So this is another one where the author reached out to me on Bookstagram and asked if I wanted to read an arc of his book that was coming out, and his name is Adam Costco, and I've actually been accepting arcs from him ever since because this was a 5-star read to me. This was wild, okay? This was a very mind-blowing book of, am I crazy? Is the character crazy? It really puts you in the headspace of the main character who has no clue what is going on. He finds a body in his basement, and the evidence points to that he murdered this person, but he cannot remember anything that happened, and he feels like he is going crazy the entire time. And so you're on this journey with him. You know what the character knows, so you feel like you are also losing your mind. My anxiety was like through the roof reading this book, which I guess is maybe not a good thing, but it says something about how enjoyable or intense this book was, like how well written this book was, because he just like nailed it, that energy. So I'm gonna put this in I enjoyed this. Definitely want to continue reading books by this author. Okay, the next one was again another hyped book over on Bookstagram and BookTube and Book Talk. Was the Butcher and Blackbird series. 2 serial killers that end up falling in love. It was right up my alley. I enjoyed it a lot. I actually loved the audiobook of this. I had a great time. I'm gonna put this in I enjoyed this because I ended up breezing through it in 2 days. Loved it. I immediately wanted to pick up the second book. I was super into it. We'll talk more about the second book in a bit, but for now it was a fun read, okay? The next one I tried reading was A Psalm for the Wild Built, and I say I tried reading it because I ended up putting this book on pause. It's about a little robot and a monk and a very cozy like tea shop or something. I just was not in the mood to read it, even though it was such a short little book. I just couldn't get in that headspace, but I feel like I would like it if I was in the right mood. And then we have most of the rest of all of the Amy Award books in the Cocky Kingman's series. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put these books in. This one was not for me. I did power through that book because, again, I hadn't reached my epiphany about DNFing yet, but I could not stand this book. This was basically Taylor Swift Travis Kelce fanfic, and it was so cringy to me. I hated it. Ugh, I hated that I forced myself to read that book. Okay, just I'm not a Swiftie, so it had no appeal to me. Okay, and then I read The Bare Naked Bearded Brawler, and this one I actually kind of liked. Okay, this was just like a little short story that she offered through her newsletter. Like if you subscribe to her newsletter, you could get these like a couple free short stories that she had written. It was an okay time. It was so short, so I'm like, it was fine. Okay, the next one in the actual Kingman series, powered through this one too, and I hated it as well. It was just so boring. Like I didn't care. I did not care about the characters. I was like, man, this is just the same repeated storyline as the first two books. Like I'm so over it. It was like the same characters, the same dynamics, the same like outcome. Like I already knew where this was gonna go. I already can guess from a mile away like what this was gonna be about. I was like, ugh, over it. Should have DNF'd it, didn't. This is where it got better, okay? I found one of my new favorite authors, Tatiana Shlote Bonet, okay? I found this author. She writes horror books. This was her first young adult horror book, and it's actually one of the most beautiful covers that I have on my bookshelf. So I'm going to put it on favorite covers. So it's just so beautiful to me, just that blue. And I also love the double faces because it's about like a demon doppelganger that comes out of a video game and tries to, you know, get the people playing the video. It's really cool. It's very YA, like Twitch streamer, video game girl, high school vibe, and I'm into it. I used to stream on Twitch, so I was like, I'm so into that. I'm gonna put this in. I enjoyed this. And then the next one that I read was also by her, and this was her first adult folk horror book that she came out with. I actually read this as an ARC. This is one that definitely blew me away. I feel like I might want to put it in this one because I feel like at some point I would want to reread this. It has this dual time frame in it where it goes from the past where this little girl survives this massacre that happens at a summer camp, very like 80s summer camp vibes, which I love, and then to her present where she's suffering from like the PTSD of that experience and feeling like she's crazy because she's hearing things and seeing things. She sees really disturbing things, and she doesn't know if she's just losing her mind or if those things are real. And it has like these cult elements in it, and it was just completely right up my alley. I feel like this author writes in the style that really speaks to my soul. Where's that in between category? Why did I do this to myself? Okay, anyways, moving on. Oh, Leather and Lark. Okay, so here's where I finally picked up book 2 in this series, okay? And I learned finally to DNF. I DNF'd this book. It was the first book I truly felt good about, like, you know what? I'm not gonna force myself to read this. I'm not liking this. I actually hate this because I hate the miscommunication trope. I just didn't want to suffer through the book. I think I chose to DNF like really early on. I wasn't even at 100 pages. I want to say I was only like maybe 50 pages in where I said, I'm not doing this to myself. This ends here. Yes, this went in the DNF graveyard and it's staying there. I do not plan to pick this book up, and I do not plan to continue the series at all because it just starts feeling like the same story over and over again. And that's what already this Leather and Lark started to feel like. I was like, oh, this is just Butcher and Blackbird again, but with the brother now. Romance series. We'll see if I ever get through one. Okay, next was The Haunting of Alejandra, also by V. Castro, who wrote Goddess of Filth, that I read earlier in the year. And I'm gonna put this, and I enjoyed this along with Goddess of Filth because it was just, I just like V. Castro's writing. She's just something about feeling that whole, you know, like Mexican culture in a book really like warms my heart because I feel like I don't get a lot of that. And I think that says something about the books that I read. Like I just never really experienced a lot of that in my reading. And through the book community, I'm starting to learn you can choose to read whatever you want to read. You don't need to read what's popular just because it's popular. So I think I'm going to lean more in the direction of what my taste has been gravitating to in 2026. And that's a goal for myself that I have. Okay, the next book I read because it was very popular over on Bookstagram that everybody was talking about Clown in a Cornfield. And it was because the movie had was coming out. And I was like, I love clowns. Hi, I love clowns and I love horror and I love horror movies and I want to read more books about scary evil clowns. So, yes, I jumped on that book and I read it and I watched the movie and they were exactly what I expected them to be. A solid, enjoyable, good time in the 3-star range, okay? So they were good. They did not blow me away. And I'm talking about the movie and the book, okay? So The Clown in a Cornfield was a good time for what it was. It felt like a very like B rating slasher movie, you know? And that's how the book read as well. So the fact that they turned it into the movie does not surprise me in the least. I think the book and the movie in comparison like have their pros and cons. There's definitely things that I like in the book that I didn't like in the movie that they changed and vice versa. I do think like the movie also fixed some things that I didn't like from the book. So it was kind of cool to read and watch them like almost back to back and like compare the two. That was just a fun time that I had. I want to say it was exactly 110 pages into the book that I started to enjoy it because the first 110 pages of this book were blah. Get through the first 100 pages and then it's boom, 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 action, 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 and then it's nonstop till the end of the book, and that I loved it. Loved it. The next book I read was another little short story, a classic, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So I had seen the movie with Brad Pitt and I did not know it was based on a book, and it's written by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think he also wrote The Great Gatsby, which I don't believe I've read either, but I watched the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I think I was feeling a little bit slumpy and I wanted to read something short and sweet to get through that month, and I think it was good. I would put it in profound and thought-provoking because there was elements that were thought-provoking about how we experience age, but I think because it was so short, it was almost forgettable for me. I know at the time I was like, oh, that's, I had a lot of thoughts around it, and then now that time has gone by, I'm like, I almost don't remember. I feel like the movie is a lot deeper because they really fleshed it out. It is actually very short and silly and almost ridiculous when you're reading it. Like, it's kind of funny. The next book that I read, I thought that I would hate. This one really surprised me. I literally was judging this book by its cover because I was like, I don't think I'm into sci-fi. I think I'm gonna hate that. I don't want to read about aliens. So this book was written in the 80s and it was very like that old-fashioned like 80s sci-fi book cover that you see on the shelves that you're like, oh my god, there's like a million of these books. But this was part of a horror online book club that I joined, and I had just joined it, and this was the first book that they were reading that I would have been a part of. And I didn't want to not participate, so I forced myself to pick it up. This book is called Stinger, and it's written by Robert McCammon. And that name meant nothing to me before picking this book up, but now I feel like this is one of my new favorite authors. And I say that even though I've only read this book, but I am dying to read more from him because the first 3 sentences that I read in the prologue of this book blew my mind. I was already obsessed with his writing. I feel like it was on par with Stephen King in that like 80s nostalgia vibe of writing, and I loved it. I was eating it up. This is a sci-fi horror book, and I feel like it leaned very much into the horror. His descriptions of every single character and the town itself, everything just came alive. I felt like I was right there in the middle of it. I would absolutely reread that book. I mean, not anytime soon because this was actually the longest book that I read in 2025 because I don't read a lot of really long novels because I feel like they are daunting to me. This is taking me so long. Okay. The next one I have is another one by Amy Ward, and it's The Ants and Santa's Pants. This was another little short story that was free through her newsletter, and so I was like, yeah, I'll read it. I don't know why I kept trying to read through this series. I think I got this idea that I started the series and I wanted to finish it, because again, it's that mentality of like, you start something, you should finish it. So I was like, okay, I've already read one, let me read the next one, let me read the next one, let me read the next one. And they're so quick and easy, I can just kind of breeze through them. And I felt like, okay, let me just check it on the list, because I'm the kind of person that's like, if I make a checklist of things to do, it feels so satisfying to just check it off, to say that I've completed the series. Like, that would feel so good. And I chose the wrong series to get stuck on. So yeah, it was not for me, to say the least. The next book I read was The Only for the Weak by Natasha Bishop, and I actually really enjoyed this. Okay, so I'm going this in the enjoyed this category. So this was an all contemporary romance, but I liked this one. So I think it was really refreshing to read a book by a Black female author and get a contemporary romance from that different lens. Anyways, not really my genre, so I'm not going to really get too into it, but I had a good time. Now, we can finally talk about the last book that I attempted to read in the Cocky Kingman series, and when I say talk about it, I don't actually want to talk about it. I finally DNF'd. I finally DNF'd the book. I finally DNF'd the series. I never want to see another one of these books again. Ugh, let's just be done with that. Okay, so the next book I read was Dreamfall. You would think this book would be for me because it's kind of based off of Nightmare on Elm Street. That I felt like was going to be right up my alley. However, it didn't work for me. I don't know what it was. I was just bored. I wasn't into it. It was also a young adult horror. I don't know. There's actually another, like a part 2. I think it's a duology. I think the next one is called Never Wake, and Dreamfall ends on a pretty big cliffhanger, and I still didn't care. I didn't care enough to pick up the next book. I was like, you know what? I'm just happy to be done with the book. So I just put it in not for me, and I was done with it. That concludes, I want to say, January through June. So I think from here moving forward, all the rest of the books are going to be in the second half of the year, where I feel like my reading got more in line with the books that I wanted to read rather than the books that I was seeing hyped up on like Bookstagram. Okay, the next book, I feel like this would have been one of my favorite books of the year if I would have finished it, but this book is on pause. This is Chain Gang All-Stars. This book is profound and thought-provoking. If I would have finished the entire thing, that's where this would fall, because it had me so invested and intrigued in the injustices of our prison system. The only reason why I stopped reading it is because I had checked it out from the library and I had to return it. And what I wanted to do actually was to buy my own copy, which I did. And what I wanted to do is read it from the beginning and actually annotate it, because it was that profound and thought-provoking that I wanted to tab it and underline it and highlight it, because there was so much good stuff in this book and I knew it was going to be so important. Because I didn't finish it, I'm not going to leave it up here, but just know that that's where it should live. But this book is on pause, and I'm going to put it here as a reminder that I need to finish this book. The next one I read was The Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and this is a book that I never thought I would pick up. Another one of those books where I was like, oh, this is like cozy and cute and blah, whatever. I thought it was just gonna be like boring, whatever. This book is actually really, really, really good. I enjoyed it so much. And yes, it was so cozy, but not in like a annoying way. It was not a romance. It was more like found family. It had so much diversity. I don't think I've ever read a book before where the main character was an Indian woman. So that was already like, wow, I need to broaden my diversity in my reading. You know, it just really said something that the books that I really liked were the ones that, you know, showed up as diverse and different and gave me different perspectives, and I really have been craving more of that, clearly. Then I tried reading Clown in a Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives, and I DNF'd this book. I was so bored. I didn't like it. I kept waiting for it to get better. I even got 75% in and I still DNF'd it, which is crazy because it's like at that point, just finish the book. But nope, why waste your time just so you can check it off the list and add it to your read books stats at the end of the year? Like, for what? If you're suffering the whole way through. And I moved on to A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. And this was my first book by Paul Tremblay, and oh man, did I love this book. And I am so excited to read more books by him. This was another possession story, but it really played on the idea of, is she actually possessed by a demon, or is she experiencing a mental health disorder such as schizophrenia? And it really has you thinking and seeing those two sides of that debate, because one of the parents is really like set on the religion aspect and the demon possession aspect and thinking like she needs a priest to get exercise, and the other parent feels more like practical, logical, like she needs to see a doctor, she needs medication, like this is all something in her head, something's going on. And you really see that battle between those two ideas, and I thought that was so interesting. And I almost would put that in the profound and thought-provoking category, because it really has you thinking about that. So, oh my gosh, it like I almost want to do that, and maybe I will, because that was such an interesting topic. And yeah, maybe I'll leave it there. And I will say, by the end of the book, I was crying at the end because of what happens at the end. Oh, I wish I could tell you, but you'll have to read it for yourself because it was so good. I did not expect that ending. Now that I'm looking at this, I can almost put The Haunting of Alejandra also in the profound and thought-provoking. Did I even talk about this book? Motherhood and the generational trauma and curses that kind of get dealt through the generations having to do with motherhood. It was like a reimagining of La Llorona and her story, and so it was very much like a folk horror, but it was such a different take. The next book I read was a buddy read with a friend that I met over on Bookstagram, and this was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I'm not interested in picking up another Riley Sager book for some reason. I just don't think his writing style is for me. I thought it was interesting for the most part, or it was okay, like it was like good for the most part, so I guess I'll just leave it here. Okay, and then I read On My Honor. Now this is a book that my husband wanted me to read, and it's a very short little children's book, and I had no clue what this was going to be about. I very much enjoyed this because I read this with my husband. We read like chapter and chapter, so the experience overall was really enjoyable. But also I will say this book had me literally sobbing. The next 4 books I read were Goosebumps books. A friend of mine over on Bookstagram hosted a Goosebumps read along. It also inspired me to want to collect all of the original Goosebumps, and I almost have all of them. I think I'm only missing about 19. I'm gonna go ahead and put these in. I enjoyed this. I also met R.L. Stine this year and got to take a picture with him, so like that was a lot of fun. I got to hear him speak at an event, and that was definitely a highlight of the year. I read Welcome to Dead House, I read Piano Lessons Can Be Murder, I read Say Cheese and Die, and I read Welcome to Horrorland. And I was worried actually that I was gonna read them and they weren't gonna live up to the nostalgia and hype that I had built up about them in my brain, but it's not true. I will, safe to say, you can go back and read Goosebumps and still enjoy them. Oh my god, why do I have so many books left? This video is gonna be 10 hours long. The next one I read was another book by Sangu Mandana, which was A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I did very much enjoy this book, almost the same vibe as A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Such a long title, I almost can't say it. It's not a series. These are not like back-to-back book 1 and book 2 books. They are totally different stories, but it feels like it's almost in the same world. It's like that same magical, cozy world. And again, it had a lot of diversity. It had a lot of found family. And so I just very much enjoyed it. I think both of these books were 5-star reads for me because I just loved them. This one was also very, I want to say profound and thought-provoking more than I thought it would be, but I still think I'm just going to leave it in this category here as I just really enjoyed it. Okay, the next book on the list is Everything She Does Is Magic. And I had to make another copy of this one because it's going in the favorite covers. I literally requested this arc on NetGalley because I saw this cover and I was obsessed. Sapphic YA romance about these 2 girls who are basically in like Halloween Town. Have you ever seen that movie, like a Disney Channel original movie or whatever about Halloween Town? That's what this book feels like. This book is the perfect Halloween fall read. Every day is just a celebration of Halloween in this town. They're obsessed with Halloween, and there are witches, and one of the girls is actually a real witch. And then as for the tier, I'm gonna go with good but didn't blow me away. It was really cute, really enjoyable. It wasn't something that I think is like the best thing ever, but I had a good time reading it, and for what it was, it was fine. It was good. Next on the list, Anne of Green Gables. This was my favorite read of the year, okay? This has so much nostalgia for me because I watched the BBC TV show that they made growing up, and I used to watch it all the time with my mom. I've seen it so many times, and this reading the book for the first time just had me so happy. I laughed, I cried, I wished I was there. She is like my favorite literary character in all of fiction. You can't not love Anne, you know? She just has such a wild imagination. You just wish that you could be her friend. It's one of those books where I feel like I wish I could jump in and live there. One of my goals for 2026 is to actually read through the entire Anne of Green Gables series. And then I read The Honeys by Ryan LaSala, and this book was good, but it didn't blow me away. I thought I was gonna love this book so much more than I did, but I think I was really confused by the fever dream aspect of The Veil, I think it was called. Ooh, okay, the next book I read was The Exorcist. Now, The Exorcist is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, like true classic, right? I didn't know that it was based on a novel. And the person who wrote The Exorcist also wrote the screenplay, which is why the movie is almost a perfect adaptation of the book. And the book is so good. Okay, I love the book. I actually love the book more than the movie, which makes sense. I feel like most of the time that's usually how it goes. But the book gives a little bit more insight into the characters. So if you love the movie The Exorcist, I feel like you'll love the book even more because you get a little bit more in-depth character development from each of the characters, and some of the characters that are not like as fleshed out in the movie, you just get to see more of that story. I'm gonna put this in the I enjoyed this category for sure. Okay, the next book I read was Revenge by Yoko Ogawa, and this was a translated book, translated from Japanese. I feel like this book was good, but it didn't blow me away. It was a series of horror short stories that kind of interconnected with each other. The next book was recommended by my mom. This was the second book in the Darkness series by Frank Peretti. It's called Piercing the Darkness, and I had read the first book in the series years ago, and I absolutely loved it. It's kind of like this angels versus demons spiritual warfare kind of book. This one missed the mark for me. The next one I read was The Scald Crow, and this was a debut novel by a debut author. Her name is Grace Daly, and I really loved this book. I'm gonna put this in I enjoy this. It was really, really good. It had good disability rep, and I think that's another thing I want to explore more of in 2026 is reading books with more disability representation in them. Oh, The Wedding People, definitely not for me. This was Goodreads' favorite book of 2024. That's why I bought it at the very, very beginning of the year when I had first gotten to the book community. I saw this everywhere, and because everybody was talking about it, I had to buy it. Finally read it. It was absolutely not for me at all. They made it sound like it was gonna be like the best book ever, and it just really wasn't. It just really, like, I had so many qualms about this. Like, what was that romance? The romance element of this book? Like, what? That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, the next one, In the Country We Love, My Family Divided. This was a memoir, and this is gonna go in profound and thought-provoking for sure. So this is about her family was deported and taken back to Colombia, and she had to live here alone as a teenager. Immigration and deportation is such a big topic, especially here in America this year, and so I felt like this book was really profound, especially for the times that we're living in. The author of this book is Diane Guerrero, and you might recognize her. She's an actress from like Orange is the New Black or Jane the Virgin, and she wrote this obviously about her own life, but she wrote this, I believe, in 2016. So that tells you a lot about not much has changed, which is very unfortunate. I feel like things have only gotten worse. So that's really disheartening, but it was a really good book. I'm glad that I at least got 2 books that were nonfiction this year. Okay, and then we have another horror classic. I read Rosemary's Baby. This was actually really good. I'm gonna put it in, I enjoyed this. The movie is almost exactly like the book. It's a great, perfect adaptation, in my opinion. If gaslighting is a trigger for you, don't pick up this book. There was so much gaslighting, and it was like frustrating me to no end, but I was like, I had to keep reading and knowing what is going to happen. And the ending, I did not expect that. I really thought it was going in a totally different direction, and then what ends up happening, my jaw was dropped. Didn't expect that, but I love it. I love the story. The ending was good. I loved it, even though I wanted something else to happen and then it didn't, but it was fun. It was a fun little twist that I didn't know was coming. And then I read Looking for Alaska. I really liked this book too. There were so many books that I enjoyed. That's good. That's good for me. I went into it blind, let's say that. Like, if you know the story, I didn't know that was gonna happen. I was a little bit taken aback by that being the premise of the story. That was pretty intense. It was pretty intense to read about. I don't think I cried or anything, but it was deeper than I expected. Breathe In, Bleed Out by Brian Macaulay. This was another horror book club read, and this one was not for me. If it was not for the book club, I would have DNF'd this book. I feel like I've seen this book on a lot of people's like tops of the year, and I'm so confused because I just didn't like it. Ooh, okay. And then I read Shy Girl by Mia Ballard. This one was good. I liked this book a lot. So this book was about a girl that ends up being in this contracted relationship with this man who's like a sugar daddy, but his whole thing is he wants her to be his dog, like literal wear a collar, like sleep in a cage kind of dog. And you think that it's gonna be almost like dark romance, kinky. It's not. Okay, it's not. Go into this knowing that, don't get fooled by this cutesy cover. It's not a light book. It's very much like an extreme horror. It gets very gory. Check all your trigger warnings. Just such a unique premise. And the author is a Black female. It was originally indie published and it just got traditional publishing. So I think it's coming out this year, I think in April. Ooh, speaking of extreme horror, I read Playground by Erin Beauregard. So this one was definitely a priority on my list of reads to get through in 2025 because I was so fascinated with this idea. I absolutely love this book. I actually think I would reread this book. Do I want to put it here? I think it was fun. I'm gonna put it, and I enjoyed this. It was really good. It was fun. I highly recommend if you're a fan of Saw or Squid Games and a lot of gore, like very, very heavy on the gore and the graphic details. But trigger warning, this has to do with children. So they're going through trials in this deadly playground that was created by this evil woman. I mean, you can tell by the cover what you're getting into, so no surprises there, but I very much enjoyed it. One of my favorite reads of the year, probably. That book actually put me into a reading slump because it was so fun. I didn't want to read anything else after that. So I chose to pick up Too Old for This. I love a book with a senior citizen main character, but this one just wasn't for me. I feel like I would have DNF'd it if I wasn't reading it to complete a challenge, which is another thing I have to reflect on. Like, I like doing challenges, but sometimes I will force myself to finish a book just so I can tick that off the challenge box, and I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want to waste my time on books that I'm not enjoying. So yeah, this book wasn't for me. I just felt like it was really bland. It's about a retired serial killer, and I feel like that would have been really, again, another book that would have hit all the marks on my I would love this book checklist, but it didn't for some reason. I had no interest in her as a character whatsoever, so it's just like, meh, like, I don't know why I'm reading this because I don't even care about you. So the next book I read was another debut novel by a debut author. Now this book is called My Lips, Her Voice by L.L. Madrid, and I was really excited to read this ever since February. I feel like It took me 2 reads, okay? I hate rereading a book, but the first time I read it, I feel like I wasn't giving it the attention it deserved because I was still kind of in that book hangover slump from Playground. And so I just feel like I forced myself to read this at the wrong time. And then I felt bad because I was like, man, I know I would have liked this if I would have just read it at the right time. So I did reread it and I enjoyed it the second time around. So I don't know if I should put this in good but didn't blow me away or I enjoyed this. I think I'm going to put this in good but didn't blow me away because my expectations for this book were so high that I feel like I just like overshot them, and it also just, I feel like reading at the wrong time just kind of tainted my experience possibly. But once I got through it and I was reading it, I really did get into it. I liked the characters. I think the writing is really good. The author has like such a great vocabulary. I love the way she like set up the world. I love the way she delved into like just the generational curse or blessing that kind of went through these characters. Like you get a little bit of the grandmother and then you hear about like the mom and then the daughters, and it's just, that's really interesting to me. You get the different timelines and different perspectives, so I did like that whole aspect of it. The part that didn't really hit for me was the murder mystery aspect of it, because I felt like I knew exactly who the killer was from, I want to say we weren't even halfway into the book, and I was like, oh, that's really obvious. It can't be. I think it was still really good, but I don't think it was like one of my favorites of the year. But I definitely would read more from this author. I do like her writing. The next book I read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. It was really good. I enjoyed it, of course. I mean, I'm a Stephen King fan. I feel like his books are very daunting because a lot of them are very long. I definitely haven't read a lot of his books, but I've read some of his books, and mostly I've seen most of the film adaptations of his books, which most of them I love. The next book I read was another 5-star read. Of course it was The Hunger Games, and I had never read this book before. I know, what a crime, but I've watched the movies, so I knew what was gonna happen. I'd seen all the movies, but the book was so good, so enjoyable. I really desperately wanted to continue reading the series. After I finished it, I was like, I just want to read the whole entire series, but I stopped myself. I didn't do it, and that's something I want to change in 2026 also. I kind of want to, if I'm in the mood to read something, I just want to jump in and read it. And I think that's what's hard when you make content or when you're doing challenges, is that you don't end up reading based on your mood anymore. And that's just what I'm finding for myself, because I used to be a really big mood reader, but now that I have a TBR game or I have challenges that I'm doing or I'm part of a readathon, it's like I'm trying to hit these challenges, which has its pros and cons, right? I feel like depending on the challenge, it could diversify your reading more and get you to read things that maybe you wouldn't have picked up, and that's a good thing. But then also it kind of steers you away from maybe finishing a series that you want to read, at least in my case, because instead of continuing the series of the Hunger Games and maybe finishing it like I wanted to, I moved on to something else instead to check another challenge prompt off the list. You know what I mean? So that's something I want to do in 2026, is maybe finish a series. Okay, the next book I ended up reading was The Silent Patient, and this book has to do with a secret vlog that I have in the works, and I've been taking way too much time to actually do that vlog, and but someday it'll be done and I will tell you more about my thoughts on this. But I enjoyed this book, and it was recommended to me by somebody, and you'll see it finally when that video comes out eventually. You know who you are. The next 8 books on this list are books that I picked up because of the Goodreads Choice Awards, the horror nominations specifically, and I have a whole video on that if you're interested. I read The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the first book that I read from him, and I really, really loved it. I'm putting this one in the profound and thought-provoking category. This book showcases the dichotomy between a Native American vampire telling his story to this white priest in the church, and it gives me very much Native American version of Interview with the Vampire vibes. Also, his take on vampires was so different than I've ever read before. I felt like they were more feral and animalistic, and it was just kind of refreshing to see vampires in a different way, and it kind of got me back in the mood for vampires again. Okay, the next book I read was Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, and this book is weird. I had a really good time with this one. I would definitely recommend it. I almost want to put it in profound and thought provoking, but it might be a little bit too weird for that. But I will say it is right up your alley if you have questioned why people are getting brainwashed by Fox News. I feel like that's the whole premise of this book of it's a very exaggerated weird look at what's going on in our society today. So highly recommend. Get ready for I can't how do I describe this better than weird? It's weird. Such an interesting take on people getting brainwashed by their technology and these messagings that they're hearing, and then like it turning into like this crazy apocalyptic kind of almost like the purge. It like builds up to this big day where people end up just turning into monsters, and it's just crazy. The next book I read was Mexican Gothic, and this was another one that I absolutely loved. It was another one of those books where I felt just so happy to read a female main character who is Mexican. This book takes place in the 1950s, and it's very gothic tone where you have like house on a hill type of vibes, where she goes into this home and it's like this haunted mansion almost, where she's going to kind of save her cousin because something's going on with her and things are not right, and she married this man and now she's kind of like hasn't heard from her and things are just strange and she's acting different, and so she goes and tries to see what's going on. And the main character is just so strong. She has her own opinions, she's very like straightforward, she does what she wants, she has her own aspirations, and it doesn't have anything to do with like, oh, I need to get married for any such reason or whatever. And it was such a like very bold character that I fell in love with her. She's definitely one of my favorite characters that I've read in the entire year. She's up there with Anne Shirley, probably. But I also have to put this book in favorite covers because, especially this cover in particular, awesome cover. Like this art style is so cool to me. Okay, then I read The Haunting of Payne's Hollow, which was absolutely not for me. It was one of those books that I could have DNF'd. I think the premise of it had me so excited to read it. I read it and I was like, oh, this sounds so cool. It was like a reimagining of Sleepy Hollow. The character development was lacking for me, and I was so uninterested that I was just bored the entire way reading it. So I would not recommend this book. Then I read You Weren't Meant to Be Human, and this is a book written by a trans male author, and the main character in this story is also trans male, and that was a new perspective for me. I had never read anything like that before, so I loved it for that alone, and specifically because the trans male character in this book is dealing with an unwanted pregnancy. So that is such a heavy topic. Absolutely check your trigger warnings. This is a horror book. It's super weird, super graphic. There's also an element in it that's very like cult and alien, but those parts I really didn't understand. It kind of gave me the same vibes as The Honeys, where there was like this main story that was really good, and then the alien cult part was so confusing to me. I had no idea what was going on, but by the end of the book I realized that just wasn't the point. Like the alien part was not the point at all. The main point was the thoughts and feelings of our main character and what they are going through, especially with this whole pregnancy thing. Another really good one was When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This was a first for me from Nat Cassidy, and I absolutely would love to read more from this author, especially after reading the author's note specifically. It made me love the book so much more, just hearing about why he wrote the book, what he intended behind the book, like what inspired him. Felt like a book that was very much about fear and how we deal with fear. The next book is The Possession of Alba Diaz, and I feel like this book is on pause because I was a little bit burnt out from reading books back to back to back. I was kind of speed running these horror nominations to get that Goodreads Choice Awards video out, and by the time I got to this one, I was just like not in the mood anymore. The next book on the list was Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So this book I feel like is like a little cozy short story collection, but it's a interconnected stories that create one full story, kind of like the Revenge book a little bit. It is also a translated Japanese book. This book is about time traveling in a cafe, and I'm going to put this one in good but didn't blow me away. I had a really good time reading it. It was cozy, but the whole thing I felt was like pretty predictable, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. I'm finally down to the last 3 books of the year. So the last book I read for the Dungeons and Book Dragons Readathon in November was Desperate Measures by Katie Robert, and I loved this book. I loved it a lot. So I'm gonna put this in I enjoyed it. This book was a whole lot of fun, all for the vibes, and if you know, you know. It was a reimagining of Aladdin, but it was with, you know, the main characters are Jafar and Yasmina. So it's a villains series romance. So it's a dark romance with the villains. I think it's called a Wicked Villains series or something like that. And I just got gifted the next book in the series for my birthday, and I'm excited to pick that up. Like I was saying, after I was done with the readathon, I was in a major book slump. I did not want to pick up not a single book in December, and I didn't read a book until the last 2 days in December. I read James on December 30th, and I read it in 1 day. It was so good. I read it because I was like, I can't not read a book in December, and I also was trying to complete a challenge. So this is where I was telling you challenges are good, because it prompted me to read this book that I probably wouldn't have picked up if it wasn't for this challenge, because the prompt for it was win a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, and that's why I picked up James. And also another challenge that I had for myself was read a book with a main character that is male and black, and so this book fit both of those prompts, and one of my favorite books of the whole year. This book was so good. I'm going to put this in profound and thought-provoking. It is a reimagining or retelling of the story Huckleberry Finn, where in the story of Huckleberry Finn, there's a character named Jim, and he's a runaway slave. Now, James takes the perspective of Jim and gives him a voice. Oh my god, I loved it. I have chills just talking about it. The audiobook. Okay, if you're going to read this book, I highly recommend also listening to the audiobook, because the narrator is so good, and it gives it a whole deeper level of immersion, I feel, when you're reading this. He's just amazing, and I would definitely highly recommend James. I can see why it won the Pulitzer Prize. And the last book that I read for the year on December 31st. Now, I read this because I needed one more book to complete my challenge for the year, and so I decided to go with Shop Girl by Steve Martin. I needed to read a book that was published in 2000, and I was like, what book am I going to finish in 1 day? And this book was only 130 pages, and the audiobook was available at the library through, I think it was Hoopla or Libby. I can't remember which one, but lifesaver, because I was able to complete it. It was only like 4 hours long, and it was very entertaining. I loved it for the nostalgia, because it felt very early 90s, and I couldn't believe that it was written by Steve Martin. Like, I had no idea he wrote a book, and I mean, it was okay. Like, it didn't blow me away. It was good. I thought it was gonna be a lot funnier because Steve Martin is funny, but it really wasn't. It was kind of like a romance novel about this girl who works in a department store selling gloves, and then it talks about like her relationships where she dates these different men, and just it was almost like a slice of life book. I liked it. I enjoyed it because like I said, of the nostalgia of the early 90s, and especially because it was short. So it was just quick, easy, good way to end out the year. I would have liked to end it on James, that 5-star amazing profound reading, but it was nice to end on something light, just because I needed to complete that last book of the year. Woo, that was a lot. I can't believe we went through so many books. I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again, because that was so much work. That was so much more work than I thought it was going to be. But how fun to see a reflection on my year of reading, my first year back into reading. this is really cool to have. I feel like I need to take a snapshot of this and save it because memories. And I feel like I've learned a few things from reflecting on my reading journey throughout the year. You know, one big major thing was DNF. DNF books that you're not enjoying. Don't waste your time. Spend your time on things that you love, that you're enjoying, that you're having a good time with. Like, it doesn't need to be a 5-star read, but at least a 3, like at least something enjoyable that you're not going to regret wasting your time on. If you're bored, put it down, you know? So I think other than that, I feel really good about the progress that I made. I have never read this much in my entire life. Like, I love books, and one thing that I have been wanting for a long time was to get back into reading, and I finally did it in 2025. So I'm super proud of myself for doing that. I never expected to read this much. I never expected to make so many friends in the book community, and it's just been an amazing year. And I can go more into depth about these things and my stats because I did keep stats, so that's another video I want to make soon. But for now, I'm gonna wrap it up because I'm so tired of yapping that we'll just continue on in the next video. I'm gonna try to be better about getting back into reading, getting back into filming and posting on booktube, but just know that, you know, I'm human and I needed a break, and I'm gonna start respecting my time and my body and my wants and my needs a little bit more. And I don't want to put too much pressure on myself to do things and force myself to do things if I just don't feel like it, because that's how you get burnout. Because that was another lesson that I learned, was be careful with burnout and remember to balance the things that you love so you don't end up not wanting to do them anymore. So I don't want to burn out when it comes to making videos because I like being here on booktube, and I don't want to burn out with reading because I do enjoy reading. So I'm going to work on balance, and I'm going to work on DNFing, and I'm going to work on reading things that I want to read, and maybe not putting so much emphasis on challenges and just kind of enjoying my reads this year. But also a little bit on challenges because I still want to diversify and read things that I may not have picked up, because I found a lot of surprises because of that. Like, you know, Stinger. I never would have picked that up if it wasn't for the challenge of that book club. So, you know, it's, again, balance. Balance is the moral of the story here. Oh, looking back, I feel like I would move the Mean Ones up into this category probably, and probably the Scald Crow. Out of all of these, I would probably just go with Hooked because this is just such a beautiful special edition. I think it's definitely the most beautiful book on my shelf right now. So I'll probably go with this with like the best, like, favorite cover of the year. And other than that, thank you so much for sticking around. I think all of this is set here and I feel good about it. Whatever, you know, ratings and feelings are subjective, but for now, this is how I feel. And thanks for sticking around, hearing me talk about my whole, you know, year wrap up of 2025. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and let me know what your favorite book of the year was. How many books did you read in 2025? And leave me a book stack emoji because we've been talking about so many books in this video. But anyways, it's nice to be back, and I hope you have a happy new year. Bye.